Our generation gap videos aim to uncover specific needs and highlight possible actions to help plan and achieve future financial goals, dependent on the age group you fall into. In this generation gap video, we're going to take a look at Millennials, or Generation Y, born between 1981 and 1996. So they're either in their late 20s or early 40s. This is a technologically savvy group raised with computers very much part of their lives. They know how to browse for bargains and use the skills to help them climb the property ladder. Millennials were at the heart of the coffee shop explosion, but increasingly they're now looking at the benefits of decaf over extra espresso shots in their Americano. One of the popular viral dance moves millennials might share with us is the running man.
With millennials, we hear a great deal about financial planning and budgeting. Can we assume that millennials have got that subject covered? If not, why would that be the case, and what should they do to get a better handle on it?
They have a better handle on budgeting than Gen Zs, and they probably already had in their own heads clarity on career and made maybe one or two job changes already, so they're more conversant and experienced with change. But I see also one of the biggest ranges in that age group from late 20s to early 40s, because you've got all the way from people who are late developers full stop in terms of maturity wise, although they're in their late 20s living like they're in their early 20s and ignoring budgeting, to people in their early 40s who could have 2 or 3 kids. So it's quite a range of priorities and significance. There's quite a shift actually, range-wise, probably the biggest of any age group, to be honest. So I witnessed the signs, the shoots of budgeting, but again, because there hasn't been the educational piece to give them the foundation of what they should do, it's still down to mum and dad or employers or their ability, which is significant, to Google in terms of how they improve their education when it comes to finance. And they're starting, as we spoke about before, to consider in detail about property. They're starting to consider where they stay in the UK for work reasons or go further afield. And they are embarking on, hopefully, long-term relationships. So I see it with professionals certainly are having kids later in life because they want clarity on their career. They also want to build up this war chest, this cash, to be able to put a deposit down on a property. So that starts to formulate these ideas in their late 20s, I'd say.
And it's a challenge, particularly in high property value areas where that attaining a property to get on the ladder is that much harder. What advice might you give to a millennial who perhaps lives in an area where that is a particular challenge? What steps should they be taking that would help them secure that first property?
I think any millennial, any person living in an area where property is in high demand, so I look at ourselves today in Bath, and significant property prices and still in demand, and always will be because of its beauty and its history. You have to challenge yourself. You know, again, it's about budgeting and planning. If this is where you want to live, that's fine, but it might take you longer to amass the cash that you need to get there. So don't be afraid of it, but you have to plan. For me, everything is, I see things from a telescope perspective, and I start at the end. So if they say, I want to, so looking at the telescope, you live in Bath, what property is that? Okay, what is that value-wise? That's the goal. Then we work out where the millennial is in terms of from their capital base and their ability to save money, and therefore realistically how long that telescope will be to amass the money so they can purchase that house. Now if the telescope is longer because they want to be living in a Bath or a Harrogate or a Tunbridge Wells or whatever, or an Edinburgh, so be it, if that brings them the quality of life. And I do think that both millennials and Gen Zs, the quality of what they do is really important, the quality of life. So I think there are compromises in terms of they're happy to be paid less if they can retain a higher quality of life and not do the 10, 12, 15 hour days that some of us have just got used to over the last decade or so. But actually for them, the quality of work that they do, how long they do it for, making an impact in society. And if that means they earn a little bit less, then they need to make that personal decision about, does that mean I can afford this future property in a more select location? If not, so be it. Impact investing, ethical investing, ESG, whatever you want to call it, I think has really gained momentum over the last 5 or 10 years, which will have coincided with the late 20s to 40-year-olds coming out of university and being more aware. So I see that generation as a crossroad generation. They're as aware as the Gen Zs, but I think they pause from the finance perspective. I think there's a conflict in their own heads about, we want to do it, but actually we realise to get that superb property that we want, then we might be having to place our deposits with a bank that isn't quite as ethical as somewhere else. But it's offering a low interest rate, so it's going to take us a longer time to actually get to amass that particular sum of money. So I do think that they are challenged intellectually with being aware they'd like to do it, but sometimes being forced to make a decision on financial grounds they can't do it.
So if you were writing a to-do list for a millennial, and with that ultimate, you're coaching them in terms of getting to that point where they want to. Well, let's focus on the property side. We've talked a lot about that. And that's a key one for them. What are the top things they're going to put on their to-do list?
Top things that millennials should be doing, I think, understand your own finance. I think people don't, from what I see at all levels. So understanding what your disposable income is and how you allocate that. I talk in silos in terms of how you allocate those monies from a cash perspective and how you subdivide that cash allocation into property, repaying student loan, holiday. The budgeting piece is huge, but this will be overlaid hopefully with more impact and awareness. So making sure they are choosing deposit takers that have strong ethical background, which makes them more comfortable on how they allocate those monies. And what I'd say, if they are employees with large companies who've got fantastic benefits, is understand the benefits. They're there, and it's almost, they will be offered as soon as they join to become more informed about them. But my experience is that doesn't happen. So I think that there's a degree of ownership. So ownership from perspective of your own budget, and ownership of any benefits that are provided for you by your employer. Understand in a personal way, what do they mean for me? So I think that's the two big messages I would give: budget and benefits.